So you know it's not a crime to be fascinated by all things criminal. And if you do like delving into the underworld, why not join us for a special live show on March 27th at the Cork Opera House. We'll be talking about the making of a cartel and all the wild and crazy stories that happened along the way. So why not join us for this special live show? Tickets from corkpodcastfestival.ie.
Pat, this is a very strange, unusual and disturbing story that you were working on last week. Tell us about this massage parlour. It's in Carlow?
Yeah, it's a little massage parlour in Tullow, County Carlow that opened up last year. And last May, essentially they had a celebration day for the opening of the massage parlour, and pictures went up. And in those pictures, there was three well-known paedophiles. One of them was a guy called Harry Daly, an ex-prison officer that I think most people would be familiar with. He was very high profile. Was given 10 years for raping and abusing his daughter Shaneda.
Who's been very outspoken.
Yeah, she set up her own group for survivors.
Right.
After getting through everything her dad had done to her. There was another guy called McKenna. Again, a fellow who would have been high profile. He was a former choir master, and he was a choir master and a music teacher who was caught distributing hundreds of images of children, child sex abuse imagery involving, babies as young as 1 year old. And a third guy, then Noel Savage, who would have, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison for raping a 13-year-old girl after a communion celebration. He got her and her friends drunk, and then raped her in a bedroom later that night, and subsequently told the guards that I'm not a paedophile, although he admitted he had sexual urges towards this 13-year-old. So basically what you have is these three men pictured at the opening, or celebrating the opening of the Chaya massage parlour down in Carlow. And those images were actually posted on some of the massage parlour's own social media pages, but also on a TikTok page that is run by Harry Daly. It was run under the name Buddy Sachs. And obviously those pictures began doing the rounds. And when we found them, we ID'd some of the people involved, and then decided to contact the massage parlour and find out what was going on.
And there's another part of the story there. But before we get on to that, these three, did they meet in prison? Did they become friends in prison?
Yes. Yeah. All three of these would have at one time or another would have been in Arbour Hill prison. Harry Daly would have served his time between the Midlands and later on in Arbour Hill prison. He was sentenced in 2010. He got a 15-year sentence with 5 years suspended, and he was released in 2017. He did 7.5 years. Aina McKenna was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2016, and he served his time in Arbour Hill prison. And then Noel Savage, he was sentenced in 2011. He got 9 years, and again, he would have served his time, the latter stages of it, in Arbour Hill prison. So all three of these men would have been in Arbour Hill prison at the same time.
And they would have been in prison at the same time and close to each one another's release, basically.
Yeah, they would have been. Yeah.
And so they show up together at the opening of a massage parlour. Is there other people at this opening that you can see? Is it this?
There was
party?
A couple of other people, but it was a small gathering. So you're talking 5 people plus the woman who was running the massage parlour. So basically, when we became aware of these images and we'd ID'd the people involved, we decided to call down to the Chaya Thai massage parlour and see what the owner had to say about it. So she came out of the massage parlour and we approached her and we asked her. I had the pictures in my hand and I said, look, what's the story with this? Are you aware that these three men are all convicted of sexual offences involving children? And she was. And when I asked her about Noel Savage, now we had been told in advance of calling down there that she was in a relationship, if not married, to Noel Savage. So when I showed her the pictures, she went, yeah, that's Noel, that's my husband. So that was how Noel Savage was at the opening. Obviously, he's married to this woman. And then I asked her about the other two men, Harry Daly and Éanna McKenna, and she said that they were friends. I said, look, you're running a facility that offers massages to, men and women. And I asked her, did she also offer, massages to children? She said she did. And I said, well, look, I think a lot of people,
Offers massages to children.
Yeah, she said she offers massages to everybody, men, women,
Right.
and children. I don't know what age of children or anything like that. She didn't go into those details. And I said, look, people, the wider public is, not speaking for the wider public. I can only speak for myself, but I can see a problem with it. And I think subsequently, as things transpired, it turned out quite a lot of people would have a problem with 3 paedophiles being at the opening of a facility like this. I asked her, could she see a problem with it? She was like, well, I suppose maybe, and I won't do it again. Now, saying that,
She won't do what again? Have another lunch and invite the 3?
Yeah. That's not something that would be repeated. I suppose, in fairness to this woman, she's running the massage parlor by herself.
There's nobody working. I was going to ask you that.
There's nobody else working there. And she did say that her husband, Noel Savage, hasn't been in the massage parlor, for the past year that she's been operating it, that she's a sole practitioner. She's the only person offering massages inside there. So it's not a case that these men are hanging around the massage parlor or anything. And there's no suggestion that is the case. But at the same time, I suppose, after we ran the story, or before we ran the story, we spoke with Harry's daughter, Shaneda.
Give people a little bit of background about Shaneda. Anyone who doesn't recall her or hasn't come across her, she's extremely brave.
Yeah. Shaneda is one of the bravest people I know. Shaneda was abused by Harry Daly for over a 10-year period. Now, there's not an exact science into how young Shaneda was when this all started. I mean, at the court case, it said it started when she was 6 years old and the abuse went on until she was 17, and that it was daily abuse. These were rapes and sexual assaults that were taking place on a daily basis. I think Shaneda called it at one stage that it was a house of doom. In subsequent books, Shaneda, or in a book that Shaneda wrote, she said the abuse may have actually started when she was as young as 3 years old.
When she doesn't remember, literally.
Yeah, but that when, before Harry Daly got out of prison, the October before, Shaneda actually met him as part of a restorative justice scenario. And she said he was apologetic at this meeting and said, that he'd changed and he was taking part in the Building Better Lives program. But I suppose with Shaneda had, Shaneda lost an awful lot, not just, the abuse itself and the traumatic after effects that abuse can have, but Shaneda's mother stayed with Harry Daly and took his side. And basically Shaneda was told that she needed to get over this, 10 years of being...
And was she 17 when she went to Gardaí?
Yeah, I think she was, she may have been older than that. I think when Shaneda did go to the guards, she was obviously believed. I think the guards did a good job in doing, Harry Daly was an ex-prison officer who'd worked in Limerick prison for 26 years. He was ex-Irish Army. He'd also been involved with the British Navy. So he was somebody who on one level people thought was this, very respectable character. But when he got home, he was a very different man. He was a predator, an absolute predator.
Was she the only child?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Certainly so she obviously went to the Gardaí, was interviewed, etc. And the court case was brought, and was she immediately shunned by her mother?
I think it was a case that her mother stood by Harry Daly all the way through this. And there was things that came out in court about her mother putting Shaneda on contraception when she was 14 years old. There was various different things that came out in that court case. But basically, Shaneda was left was left very much to fend for herself, and she did fend for herself. I mean, Shaneda has turned what was an extraordinarily difficult experience into something positive. She set up the survivors side-by-side group, on Facebook, where victims of abuse get to talk to each other and they get to help each other. If they've trials, if their abusers' trials are coming up, they can ask each other for advice, and that is a huge help, because not everybody is willing to talk to the official services and everything.
Exactly. And she also was somebody who had to waive her anonymity, didn't she? She had to give up her anonymity to become a kind of campaigner for that and to name her own father.
Yeah.
She had to make that decision that...
Yeah, which she did. And I suppose, having gone through the restorative justice and everything, and she believed that, he was living a life of quiet anonymity. And then after we found all these images and everything, and I was speaking with Shaneda, and she went on this Body Sacks website, it was a shock for her to see this man living his best life, like dancing in music videos and singing along with them and everything, and having a following on TikTok. It wasn't the quiet, retired kind of existence you might have expected from somebody who had been, convicted of such heinous crimes.
What had she to say about the three of them befriending one another and kind of going out there to socialize, I suppose?
She was shocked and disgusted, to be honest with you. She said that the images had sickened her to her stomach, had sickened her to her core. She was concerned at the fact that here you had three paedophiles, openly associating with each other, not making any attempt to stay out of the limelight, I suppose. She was also concerned that, somebody operating a massage parlour had seen fit to invite men convicted of these crimes to the opening. She said she didn't see how anybody could think that was acceptable.
It happens a lot, doesn't it, in prison, that these like-minded people befriend one another?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's that's the other side of the wider society is obviously going to treat people like this as pariahs. Most people won't want anything to do with them. So I suppose you do have a situation where some of them will drift together and end up being friends amongst themselves outside of prison. Now, there is systems in place for dealing with paedophiles after they get convicted paedophiles after they get out of prison.
Yeah, like take Harry Daly. What's the situation with him?
Well, he told Shaneda during the restorative justice meeting that he had taken part in the Building Better Lives program, which is basically what they do in the last couple of years with these guys' sentences is they will put them into these groups of, say, 8, and they will take part in these modules, basically offering different therapeutic services, but also teaching them how to manage their lives on the outside and how not to reoffend.
Does this happen within Arbor Hill? Because I think it used to be, was it in the Granada Institute?
The Building Better Lives program is something that's run by the Irish Prison Service. It's been on the go for over a decade. It's based on a Canadian program, and basically it's a modular program. So you'll do 2 years. The last 2 years of your sentence inside in the prison, you'll take part in this, and then when you come out, there's other things. There's these the other programs that have also been set up. Circles of support and all of that kind of thing to help.
So is it observing this as almost an addiction and trying to teach people how it's unacceptable in society and how they have to handle it and not sort of...
I'm not sure they treat it as an addiction. They treat it as a crime.
Yeah.
It is a crime.
Yeah, of course.
It's it's not, in terms of the scale of criminality, you have all these different crimes that people take part in. Some of them are property related crimes. You obviously have murders and manslaughters and all this kind of thing. When it comes to people who are convicted of crimes against children, the victims in those cases, their entire lives have been damaged by what these people have done. So, and that's the flip side with these things, that, a story like The Last Day, where you see these 3 guys attending a massage parlour and appearing to have the time of their life and go out for meals.
Thinking that's appropriate.
Having a great time.
Yeah.
Flip side of that is each of these guys had victims.
Yeah.
In Aina McKenna's case, even though it was child sexual abuse imagery. There was hundreds of those images, so there's hundreds of victims.
Yeah.
In the other two cases, there was one victim in each count, but they have to see, these images. They have to see these guys, who are convicted of horrendous offences, and here they are at the opening of a massage parlour having a great time.
In my experience, a lot of people who are convicted in relation to, paedophilia, child sex abuse, that kind of thing, they absolutely do not see that there's anything wrong with it. They think there's something wrong with you because you think, they'll by and large deny the offences unless there's something in it for them to plead guilty. They serve their time, but it feels as if they aren't in any way fixed. And there is that whole debate on whether you can or you can't fix them, or whether you can just manage them, which is really what the Sex Offenders Register is about, trying to manage these people in society, know where they are, somewhat know what they're doing. Yeah. From their addresses and etc. So just that program, what sort of things are they teaching them? Is it life skills? Is it?
Yeah, I think there's a mix of everything.
Is it when they go on the exercise, when they do the walks and all that sort of?
Yeah, there's personal therapy, and there's also a different strategy towards managing their reintegration into society. But I suppose, like in the case of Harry Daly sat down with Shaneda. That's something that has to be agreed by both sides. And he said he was sorry for what he had done. In the case of Noel Savage told the guards that he wasn't a paedophile. Somebody who rapes a 13-year-old child, that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And Éanna McKenna, obviously hundreds of them. Éanna McKenna was only found out because his after he'd broken up with his boyfriend, the boyfriend went to the guards and told him he had seen that Éanna McKenna had pornography, child sexual abuse imagery on his laptop. I suppose the prisons do what they can and the best they can to try and reduce the danger of these guys offending again.
As they reintegrate into society. Harry Daly's sort of activities then, by setting up a TikTok site and all that, would sort of, it
shows a certain arrogance,
doesn't it?
It does. I mean, to be trying to grow a following on.
Is the apology meaningful if he comes out and does that?
That's a question you'd have to ask Shaneda. But I mean, I'd have my own feelings about it.
For sure, yeah. So it's, let's get this right in case we get the wrong massage parlour, because this is the Chaya, CHAYA Thai massage. There's a number on the front of it to book for appointments, and it is in Tullow in Carlow. Is it the only massage parlour in the town? Maybe?
No, there's a number.
Is there?
There's a couple of massage parlours in the town, but like in the wake of the story coming out, there was a huge backlash on various different social media websites against the massage parlour. And yesterday, the massage parlour put up messages on various different social media platforms saying that it was closing down. And on the Facebook yesterday, they actually put up a notice saying that, if people wanted to cash in whatever vouchers they had received, they could make contact. They also put up notices on Instagram of a closing down sign inside the front window. So I suppose that in itself speaks to the fact that if the lady who was running it, Chayapa Kinahan, if she didn't realise last week that this was thoroughly unacceptable behaviour, she realised it by yesterday.
Yeah, okay. And it was the kind of the messages were from people horrified by this, obviously.
Yeah. People were very upset, and they didn't think it was acceptable. That they didn't think it was acceptable because, look, if you're if you're attending a massage parlor, you have to hope that you're going in there, that it's a setting where the people there are suitably qualified and would have, I suppose, the good sense to realise that you can't really have paedophiles attending a place where you're offering services like this.
An ill-conceived launch party that came back to bite, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Pat O'Connell. If you are already a subscriber to crimeworld.com, you've probably binged on our 6-part deep dive into the life and the rise of the dapper Don Christy Kinahan. From the streets of Dublin to the head of a global cartel, what made and moulded the ambitious Kinahan? And where is he now as he runs from the law? For those of you who haven't joined us yet, here's a short extract from our exclusive series, which is just a click away. So we're going to do a rest here. We're going to start this tome, which is the sort of the life and crimes of Christy Kinahan Sr., who has to be the most fascinating individual in the entire sort of Kinahan cartel set. You know, he is an intriguing character, to say the least.
I think he's the most interesting of all the gangland criminals, really, if you see where he's come from and where he's ended up and how he's managed to navigate through all of those eras of organised crime. An incredible story. If he was involved in another arena of life, he'd be regarded as a kind of heroic businessman. But of course he's not. He's involved in a murderous cartel. But an incredible story.
And there's a little bit of intrigue and mystery to his background, which we're going to go into. Some of it is clear, and other bits, the stories that go around the mix, and you can never, like, for example, you know, some people would say he was a heroin addict. I know he did tell the courts at one point that he did that, but he did it for a reason. And the reason was he wanted a free education.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very interesting, the heroin addict, and maybe we'll come back to that.
We'll come back to it, because that is something that, you know, certainly some people close to him say that was never the case.
Yeah.
And those who are sort of, I suppose, become his enemies in more recent times would definitely say that, like it's a
stick to beat him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's other little bits that are unusual. We'll start and we'll go through as much as we know factually, and then we'll also discuss the rumours. So he's born in 1957. He's 6 years older than Jerry the Monk Hutch, which just gives him a little bit of a, you know, we can see where he is. He's what I would always say was into the bosom of a respectable middle-class family. Now, some intrigue comes with this. His father, to my understanding, was a taxi driver who worked the Gresham rank on Stephen's Green. And that would have been a good job.
That would have been a good job, a well-earning job. Certainly taxis, back in the day when taxis were protected. His father was also at some point registered, or went, I think, on as a dairy farm manager, and also people would say he was involved in kind of street trading. Not, you know, as a lot of people in Dublin would have been over the years, involved in some stalls and selling in that sort of arena. So Christy Kinahan is raised in Cabra, but his birth cert says that he was born in England, in a place called Perryvale, near Ealing, I think, in London. So this is the late 1950s, when at that time in Irish history, we were, you know, there was high unemployment. A huge number of people left Ireland to go to England at times to get work. Many of them returned, but that would have been one of the big points of emigration, where young couples got married and went over there. Certainly, Christy Kinahan wasn't raised in England, but he certainly does seem to have lived there at times. He's had connections to Birmingham and that sort of area, maybe all his life. So he's described, I suppose, as having a middle class upbringing.
Well, I suppose the first house that we can look upon that we know he was in as a child, and he was the only boy in a family of three girls, Denise, Maria and Sally Ann. The mother appears to run a B&B from what is a generous Edwardian house. Do you know the name of the road?
Charleville Road.
Charleville Road.
So, I mean, yeah, I know it well. I mean, I would have grown up very close to there. I mean, those houses are worth a huge amount of money. Now, like a lot of houses in that area, for example, those big houses on the North Circular Road, which aren't far away, there probably would have been times where you would have picked them up at a bargain price, but it would be at, you know, very, very far away from some of the figures we've discussed. For example, the grinding poverty in which Jerry Hutch would have been born into. Certainly Christy Kinahan would have been raised in something that's now worth a huge amount of money, that home. And it's
would they have always been a middle class sort of a home? We're using that term very loosely here.
I you know, that's part of East Cabra.
Yeah.
Right now, if you walk through East Cabra now, you can't. There's organic coffee shops and all of that sort of stuff, and houses being sold for routinely close to $500,000. Like back in the 60s, it wouldn't have been so much like that, I think. And those houses, like a lot of places in sort of Stony Batter or somewhere like that, those houses wouldn't have been seen as posh houses.
Would a taxi driver's wage have bought that house?
Well, it would have. It would have. I mean, it would be far bigger than most houses in that area, and would have cost a lot of money. But I suppose it's a different context, and Cabra would have been different then. Christy Kinahan would have been growing up in the 60s, early 70s when he's a teenager, and Cabra at that stage would have been a lot kind of wilder, I suppose. Like a lot of areas, there was a lot of homes built at one stage, and young people grew up, and it certainly would be a far more settled area, just like places like Crumlin and Drimnagh have become far more settled as the time has gone on. So he would have been brought up in an area that I wouldn't describe as being a sort of upper middle class area. He would have been grown up in a working class area, in a big house in a working class area, really.
And yeah, it's a big house.
Yeah.
It's an impressive looking house. It always would have been. We do have some suggestion that the family originally lived in St. Teresa's Gardens.
Yeah.
To go from St. Teresa's Gardens to Cabra and to this Edwardian period property is a huge leap.
It is a huge leap, and people would have said to me, for example, that the connection between the Kavanagh and the Kinahan family, for example, has always been a bit.
This is Bomber Kavanagh's parents.
This is Bomber Kavanagh's parents would have known Christy Kinahan's dad. They would have been friendly. All those people have no involvement in crime. There's no suggestion of that, but that it would have been, I suppose, maybe not as straightforward as this is he's a middle class guy. It's somewhere along that line, I suppose. And like most Irish people have, the poverty is only one generation away, I suppose.
Well, he certainly had aspirations, and he was very smart. In school. Though it is said, and it just shows you when somebody gets as big a news story as Christy Kinahan that his leaving cert results have been made public. Do you know that? Didn't know that.
And maybe not made public, but the Sun did a story about how he actually failed his leaving.
Right.
So Christy Kinahan, look, there's no doubt about him being smart, but certainly that was said that he only passed 2 subjects. He would have gone to, it said he went to Declan's in Cabra first and got expelled, and then went to O'Connell's in the North Inner City. Now, O'Connell's Christian Brothers School, probably one of the most famous schools in Dublin. My own father would have gone there. People would have got a scholarship, and it would have seemed to have been a really prestigious school. Past pupils would have included James Joyce, Pat Kenny, the broadcaster, former Taoiseach Sean Lamass, PJ Mara. Also, interestingly, and probably a relative contemporary of Christy Kinahan would have been Tony Gregory would have gone there, who would play a huge prominent role in the anti-drugs marches in the city. So he would have gone. He would have, again, that would have been sort of a prestigious school. But he seems to have not thrived. And then I think we get into a bit of a grey area when he leaves school.
But he excelled, apparently, at sport and at kickboxing.
Yes, and that was a thing that he kept up, I think, through all his life, one way or another. And obviously his sons would have a huge interest in boxing as well.
If you liked what you just heard, go to crimeworld.com now and subscribe for more ad-free listening, exclusive content, and the best crime stories around.